Childress.
Thank you, Hugh. Well, it's great to be here in Glastonbury. I've been here a number of times, but this is my first conference here. The Megalithomania, what a great idea for a conference. Tell you just briefly about myself. I was born in France, but my parents are Americans. I spent some years in France, then grew up in America. I grew up in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. I was a skier and later a mountain climber. I was always interested and loved to travel around the world. My parents liked to travel. And I was just 18, 19. I was studying Chinese at the University of Montana. And I was able to go to Taiwan as an English teacher. That got me to Asia. I'd always wanted to go to Nepal and Tibet. Technical climbing interested me, as well as stuff in Tibet, Tibetan Buddhism. And like you guys, I've always been interested in unusual things, ancient history, and Atlantis, megaliths, and some of the mysteries of the past. So with that said, fasten your seatbelts and let's go to the lost cities of South America. I always like to briefly introduce the whole concept of Atlantis. Atlantis comes from the Greek historian Plato. Plato talks about it being an Egyptian story. The Egyptians themselves tell Plato, they say, you Greeks don't even know your own history. Your country's a lot older than you even know. And then he tells them the story of Atlantis. The idea that Atlantis was somehow in the Atlantic. This is a sonar photograph that was taken by a robotic sub off of Cuba, 1998, supposedly of city streets, of pyramids, 2,000 feet below the Caribbean Ocean off the west part of Cuba. Also right around that area in the Bahamas is the famous Bimini Wall, giant megaliths underwater, possibly man-made or maybe natural. There's over 200 known sunken cities in the Mediterranean, including 2 cities that have been found off of Alexandria, 35 kilometers out into the Mediterranean. Mainstream archaeologists are telling us now that the oldest ruins in the world are on Malta and Gozo. And these ruins here are supposedly the oldest known ruins. They're said to be at least 9,000 years old. We're talking 7,000 BC here. That we're getting towards the time of Atlantis. Atlantis being 10,000 BC or so, according to Plato and the Egyptians. In Malta, you also have these cart tracks cut into stone. They're the same gauge as Roman cart tracks were, and also British railways. They must be 5, 6, 7, 9,000 years old. Yeah, they go off cliffs. In Malta, they say that a giant wave hit Malta and wiped it out. There were pygmy elephants, pygmy hippopotami, and other weird animals in Malta. Many of them were washed into this cave. Something hit Malta and it was wiped out, and the Mediterranean was filled in at that time. In the Eastern Mediterranean, in Lebanon, is the Baalbeka Valley, and there the largest known megaliths in the world are found. These are the giant ashlars at Baalbek. Some of these weigh 1,000 tons, or 100,000 tons, I should say. There's the largest known blocks and they're still in the quarry. They really are huge, larger than a railway car, say. We'll see some of this also in South America just in a minute. Mainstream archaeologists have to explain how you're going to move a 1,000-ton block around. Their explanation right now is that by using small hourglass-type stones that are cut into small cuttings in the blocks, then you build a giant cage around these huge blocks, and you have to have lots of pulleys and things like that. And then you can move this block a few inches, and then you start all over again. This is allegedly how they were moving megaliths, but you have to ask why. Why would they do something like this? Why are they trying to build in what would seem to be